Okay, it's time we begin. This podcast is going to be about a story which I found really interesting, different, and very unique. Very unique, like no, like any kind of a story. And these are some are from the facts, some are myths, but the thing is, I had my own brain floating around this idea of being obsessed with this story, and I've added the things that maybe could have happened during those times, and that's what I want to talk about in this podcast. It's not just some fantasy podcast in my head, or it's not a cloud that I live in, but it's something that could actually make you a better person. That's why I'd like to share this podcast. So before I begin, I just want to say we have two things here. One is a sense of communication, and the other is a sense of understanding. Now, a sense of communication is good, but we are talking to each other, we are listening to each other, but are we really listening? Are we really in a state to understand? Are we even trying to understand? That's the question that needs to be in your head so that you're aware of what people are trying to communicate with you. Because words just put out your thoughts like 5 or 10%, maybe eye contact of 50%, 15%. But there's much more to it, because if I've been through some circumstances and there's another person who's been through the same kind of circumstances, I don't even have to use words to understand each other. So I hope you're in a state where at least you're trying to understand this podcast, not just with the words, but with your imagination. Now, this story is very unique, and the way it can be played in my head is very different. The way it can be played in your head is different, and another person is different. So what we got to see is everybody takes this story in a perspective they like, but you got to clear that out of your mind, because it's not about perspective anymore. Now it's having the freedom to think the way you want. Now, if you look at this, for example, how did cars come up? Someone wanted to move from one place to another, and then they came up with a bullock cart or a cart or a chariot, and then they turned it into a machine, and that machine became a car. So it had a specific design. So that's basically like stereotyping. This is how cars should look like, and that's the principle everybody follows and innovates on. But you can also make a car that looks like something else, like a circle or anything, that in a way you want to do it. So forget everything you know. That's the only way of finding something new or discovering something, when you forget everything you know. So I am looking at the story in a way that I don't understand anything, in a way that whatever I've learned in school and everything, I'm trying to forget everything aside, and then I'm listening to the story. So that way it gives you more insight on the story, it gives you more a sense of understanding. So that's what I'm trying to say here, because when I say the story, you don't look at the story at your perspective, but you look at the base of the story and build a story in your head to see if this could have been possible. Because by saying I don't know, you actually increase your possibilities of knowing more. But it's like a sense of balance here, to keep it between I know and I don't know, because it's important to keep your individuality at the same time respecting grace. So it's like as if you're standing on an ant, not too strong to kill it, not too easy to let it go. You're in the perfect balance, such a delicate and sensitive way of looking at things. So we could begin the story. So this story is about the Mauryan Empire, especially Ashoka, the king of the Mauryan, one of the king in the Mauryan clan. So it all began when Chandragupta Maurya started the kingdom, or like he took over Magadha with the help of Chanakya. For people who don't know about the Mauryan Empire and Chanakya, it, Mauryan Empire was one of it was the biggest Indian empire during these times, just before the Greeks and just during the Greek time, during Alexander the Great time, or a little bit here and there, left or right, a little bit in the future or a little bit in the past. That's not the matter here. But I want to talk. There was Chandragupta Maurya. There was and Chanakya. Chanakya is like one of the most valued teachers in Indian history, Indian ancient history, or history, because he's one of those persons who was a royal advisor, who was a psychological warfare analyst. So imagine cracking the enemy's psychology to like knock him down is something that takes work, and that kind of work is not easily, or it's not just normal hardship, but it's like a lifetime hardship to get to that sense of tutoring or administration or advising. So he was the royal advisor for Chandragupta Maurya, and when this kingdom came together, it was not just about one group of people, or one kind of squad or something like this. It was filled with students of Chanakya. It was filled with Yavanas, means Greeks. They're called Yavanas in the books. I don't know why. And they had Himalayans, the Baltics, and so many other people. You know, the Mauryan Empire was really, really diverse, because the way they took over it, because there was also some kind of Shudras, like the low caste communities of the society of Magadha. So it was filled with people who were creative, who were like looking for equality, democracy, or like who wanted more international trade and things like this. And it was during the Mauryan Empire time that there was a lot of Indo-Greek settlements and things like this. But you see, everybody has their own story, and everything is different from each other. It's like a DNA factor, and it's not that the other kings are not that great, but everybody is good. But when you go to the Oscars, you have just one person who's taking the spotlight. So that's how Ashoka took my spotlight, and that's what I want to talk about. So definitely he's one of the kings that's descended from Chandragupta Maurya, and he's definitely grown up with values, principles, and definite what do you say, Kshatriya Dharma. Kshatriya Dharma is like a soldier's or a king's job or something like this, principle or duty. The thing is, he was known as merciless king, because in the beginning, not now, but what happened in the beginning was he was one of the most merciless kings. He was the most aggressive person, and he turned into a Buddhist and the most peaceful king ever. How did this happen? How did this transformation happen? And what was something that he went through that actually got him to that space? So I'm going to talk about it, but that's not the most interesting part yet. I was going to talk about how this whole empire was built, how this was so international back then, how Greeks played such a huge role in the spread of Buddhism, and how Indian history doesn't contain a lot about Ashoka. You see, the way this kingdom was built was pretty neat, like nothing like today's today's societies or today's way of development, because it was eco-friendly, it was green. At the same time, it was the most best architectural designs with a lot of geometry, because you look at any Mauryan buildings, or most of the Cholas, or anything, there's a lot of geometry involved in Indian architecture. And they had a lot of Indo-Greek settlements, because they both the Indian and the Greek kings were, I can't generalize, but most of them were like, they fought for honor, and they really respected their enemy for being brave. So things like this, a lot of events like this happened, and things like this. So during Ashoka's time, you look at the way it was established, the way the society was formed, the way things were running smoothly, and things like this, the way the trade was done, the way the elephants were trained, the way they had traps for people who were coming into the palaces, or the villages, or the towns, or the cities, that during those times, the way they had theater, the way they had built fountains, or statues, or pillars. It was built in such a way that the nature was never affected, and it was actually part of nature. It was like, okay, there's a building now, it's made of stone, and stone is a part of nature. Like, it wasn't like, there's so much construction material with like so much transportation and pollution. They knew what they were doing. And it was a story that traveled everywhere. So what is the most surprising thing about this is that even though the story lives everywhere and people know about it, it's not really recorded in some of the history books. I think it's in Buddhist scripts, Hindu scripts, Tamil Puranas, and in the Greek history, but it's not recorded in the Indian history, which is very surprising and very mysterious, because this is why this story has an element of mystery. So what happened during this time? And there was also a society, or a group of people, I don't know what to say. I can't call it a society or a secret society or anything like this, because it could have been any kind of organization, and I'm very sure this organization could have been an open organization, right? So there was an open organization, according to my perspective, in this Mauryan Empire, where they had all the intelligent people there, or like really, really smart people. Maybe one other thing that I felt interested was with the Nalanda schooling, or the way of the Mauryan schooling. It was not just limiting to one topic, so you could be a philosopher and a doctor at the same time, maybe, because it didn't have limits with subjects. So you could combine each and every subject in each and every way. And this way, the way an architect can be a genius too, or an artist. So it doesn't really matter what field you're a genius in, but you're just in the squad of the most elite people. So during Ashoka's time, it was said that there are stories which travel around, but like, where do these stories come from? That's the question, right? And why are there so many people from so many different parts of the world talking about the same story? Maybe perspectives change, but the same story. So maybe the history was erased, but the way they left it wasn't. So this organization consisted of highly talented, or skilled, or intelligent people, that they had knowledges, and they had a knowledge that is not just for Earth, but for something else as well, for something that's extraterrestrial, or a science that understood a lot of other things. Because you look at the architecture those times, or the societies those times, it was built really good with not much machinery. So you can think about it, their knowledge was pretty sharp, and it was something you can apply on. So there's a story about these Ashoka and the nine men. So they say instead of an open organization, this could have been a secret society that actually ran during the Ashoka's time. So this nine men could have been like, so Ashoka wanted to, after he mercilessly killed a lot of people in a war, he wanted to dismiss all the knowledge from the world, or make it extinct, because the knowledge was neat, but it was always in the wrong hands. So since he wanted to divide and throw the knowledge off, he divided it into nine different topics, and gave it to nine different people who didn't even know each other apparently. And these nine books were like on time travel, gravity, communication, microbiology, nerve impulses, and psychological warfare, and things like evolution and things like that. So it was given to each person, and it's been carried on from family, and the knowledge is given out by these people to the world when the world becomes mature enough to like handle it. And this is one story, but the way I look at it is, because it was definitely not a secret society. It was a society that was very open, because it was used in their architecture, it was used in their roads, it was used in their canals, it was used in their trades, it was used for wars. Like, dude, you can't train 500 elephants, starve them, and still have them under your control during war in such a chaotic situation, unless you understand how the nerve impulses work, or how to control the mind, or how to communicate. Because this communications book could have, it was not just about communicating with words, it was about telekinesis, or telepathy, or things like this. And they also had this is also myth, there's no true source that accepts it, that there was a chance that they also could have spoken to aliens, and there was a book on gravity which could have like literally made like they had pictures of Vimana. Vimana means what do you call it? Vimana means you could say UFO or a plane, but that works on gravity. Like, imagine having something, some kind of UFO or a plane that works on gravity thrusters. So for that to happen, you need to understand gravity itself. So definitely it has a science, the science that makes technology. And we, on the other hand, we have science to make some limited technology. We have limited science. They would have had science out of this world, definitely out of this world, because the more you understand science, the more technologies can be made of it. Like, you can't use the science that's on Earth, on Mars, or on Jupiter, because you have to come up with a different science. Because in some other galaxies, you have different logics. Maybe 1 plus 1 might be 3 in some galaxies. So the logic varies differently in different spaces, right? And why do I think it was an open society is because it was so obvious that they were using it. They were using it for wars, and they were using it in their architecture and so many other things. But you see, there's another thing about this. It was also calm and harmonious when it came to the Mauryan Empire, because it was like, it's better to be in the garden after learning all the fighting skills and chill out, to peace out, just have it in case. It was something like that, the Mauryan Empire. And I could say, by the way the history is written on it, that the society had people with higher IQ on a general scale compared to us today. Definitely, because it's quite obvious if you see their lifestyles and their way of living. And they also had a book on like light, the speed of light, how to control light, how to use light as a weapon and things like this, or how to perceive light in different ways. Because if you can communicate to animals, you can actually get perspectives from the animal way of looking at the light, or from the lizard way of looking at the light. I mean, what I'm trying to say here is, all the optics we have today, all the optics we are learning today, or things about light we are learning today, is just human optics, like human eye, a perception, just one perception in this whole of earth. Because you see, the way we see things on the planet is not the way the animals see it or the other creatures see it. They might have a whole different definition of light. So if we can figure out how they perceive light, you see, if we get like more than a quite number of perceptions on the same thing, we can find out the common point to realize what's actually going on there. So you never know if this is a lie or just an assumption that's just working out just fine like that, So it is said that this is a secret society, but I think when he wanted to wipe off this knowledge from the world, the whole world cooperated with him to actually end the charade of knowledge, because it's like reversing the Adam and Eve story, it's like reversing it, and that's pretty good. For that, you need massive influence on people, or massive friends, or things like this, because you see, the stories have carried on, but it seems illogical. But you go to the deep villages, or people, you have people who actually talk about these things like telekinesis and the stars and horology and things like this, astrology. Maybe they're not accurate because they don't know how to do it exactly, but it's an obvious thing that these things existed. Then how do the stories come from if not, right? And so what if, like, during this time, this knowledge was so bad that everybody thought it was toxic and they wanted to have innocent, simple human lives. So Ashoka took over Buddhism. He got many other foreigners into the Mauryan Empire to live in harmony, because he just wanted harmony, and if anybody else wanted to be in that space of a good vibe, he offered them that. He gave them citizenship, and he had the Buddhist communities. There were many Greeks during those times staying in the Mauryan Empire as well, along with the Himalayans. So Greeks and the Himalayans played a huge role during those times with the spread of Buddhism and the Buddhist way of life. So you see, why am I saying that this could have happened in a very open way? The whole dissipation of knowledge, it could have happened because everybody was suffering with the knowledge they had. Because the more you're aware, the more it's on your conscious, the more negativity is on your conscious. So I think that's what they wanted to erase, and definitely the world agreed to it, because it was during the Mauryan Empire time that the currency was actually introduced. You see, The whole idea of coins or money was introduced during these times, from the whole barter system, or exchanging elephants for war soldiers, or exchanging elephants for property, or you know things like this. It was always a trade like this. So they transferred what we call value from it being knowledge to something called money or currency or silver coins or gold coins. You see, and as the generations went down and down, people just kept forgetting what this empire really had. Because you see that the way they distracted it from knowledge to money was pretty neat, and nobody noticed it actually, because it was from the same kingdom, it was from the same Mauryan Empire, but they've done it really really smoothly, and only that generation, when it was released, maybe understood it and didn't pass on to the next generation. So it was a thing that was in the human conscious on a very unconscious level. You see, it's like it's like saying the Internet of Things is genius, but it's also very toxic. So it's madness. Instagram or anything. So we all live in this trance, our lives which are into our phones or laptops or things like this. It's like in a bubble there inside the internet. And since it became too toxic for everybody, one man who's like ruling the world, or who's the most influential in the world during this time, just decides that it should be taken off. It should be removed just like that, and distracts like the most valuable thing today, data, to something else, you know. So that's what could have happened. It's a possibility of this happening, because if not for currency, there'd be a lot less issues in so many factors in today's world. I'm not saying it's a bad thing or a good thing, because even I'm an ambitious person. I'm just saying how you can relate to these things and how you can figure out the dots, right? So that was one. And along with erasing the knowledge, you see, there's no remaining history of Ashoka itself in the history texts. So other than the Buddhist and the Greek and the other things, or maybe it is available and it is somewhere there in the world and it's not so easily available. It's maybe hidden, who knows. So if you look at it, it's like he disappeared just like that. His story disappeared just like that. There's no accuracy there. And it's something like a black hole that sucks itself in instead of the things around it, and it just becomes nothing, like as if it didn't exist at all. And for a great story like his, I think it should be out there. It should generate a lot of curiosity around people, so people understand that this person was not just any other kind of a person. This story needs to be heard. And so imagine, we struggle so much, we go through things for this 3-bedroom apartment or the studio flat in the city center, or for that villa you love. We work so much in our lives to conquer like this much of land. Imagine the Mauryan Empire, especially in a place like India with such diverse cultures and so many languages. They got it under one roof like nobody has, and that's something you need to appreciate. And that's why I have a lot of respect for Alexander the Great as well. To conquer so much land during those times was not just something like buying a flat or board like during any of the recent distant times. It was much more during those times. And at that point of time, when he wanted to dissipate the knowledge or remove the knowledge, like his story was removed or was not available in history, just to remove it that way to nothingness, like from ashes to nothingness or something like that. He should have been the most influential person on the planet, or his secret society would have been really, really good at developing in a way that people are not even aware of it, which could have been a really, really impossible task. Both sound impossible, but for a genius person or for a mad psycho person, that sounds possible. So, yeah, that's how it ends. It's not a story. Maybe it's a story. Maybe you think this is madness, or maybe you think this is genius. But are you listening? Are you trying to understand? Is there a sense of communication here? I'm not asking you. I'm asking this to myself. And I hope you're doing that too. Thank you, everyone. I hope you like it. Share it with the right people because I'd rather have quality people listening to this than a lot of quantity. And if you know some friends who are into deep thoughts, thinking about stuff like this, share it to them. You share it to one person like that and 10 people who are not into things like this, I'd rather prefer that one person. Do subscribe, like, and you can even follow me on Instagram. The link is below. This is Ritik, and I'm signing off.